Charles, can you talk more about what happened to you in the residential school? I know these are terrible things to talk about, but people need to know.
Just give me a second.
Yep.
Water's heating. Before we did this, before I knew we were going to sit down and do this, I was meditating to my grandparents about giving me strength here up in Williams Lake. My family, my wife and my children are from here, so I wanted them to learn the Shuswap way besides my own. So I wanted to, I'd like to thank the Sugarcane Tribe for allowing me to be here doing this today. Because I'm working on some things for them about that residential school that they had here and some history that they taught me here, what I could put on their panel for them. First of all, I think if you could think of all the abuses you can say in English or whatever, it happened in here. It really happened. And they hid it so well that people didn't even know what was going on right next door to them. I was five and a half years old when I got raped by a nun, and then I got raped by a preacher the next day. So they sort of shut me down. I didn't want to be around that. I didn't want to be hurt like that. I didn't want to live like that. So I didn't really learn anything by that or what they were doing. They're being very mean every which way you can think of. And they would tell you it's Bible study time and you never seen a Bible. So I really sort of don't know what's in that Bible because I don't care about it anymore. I probably would have learned more about it if they actually showed us what it was that we were supposed to learn. But you get brought down to the boiler room and they would just rape you and molest you and make you do things to them. If you don't abide by their rules, you're going to either get really hurt or you're going to be a memory. As a little kid, you get really scared of that stuff because you don't know, there's nobody there to help you. There's no parents to stop them from what they're doing. There's nobody there. Not even another child could help you because they would just get hurt with you. I can talk about it today because it's not happening no more, and I don't allow that around my family, and I don't wish that kind of pain on anybody, not even my worst enemy. I still, when they found out about these graves, I started having bad nightmares all over again. I started sweating really bad in my palms. And I wake up mad because of what I was dreaming about.
Hey, Charles, do you remember when we talked about your dreams a few years ago and you were a little kid in your dreams? And you told me you hadn't looked in the mirror for 40 years, that you wouldn't look in the mirror?
22 years, Jordan. 22 years I wouldn't see myself in my face or anything because I was ashamed of myself.
I first thought about making a video about this was to say, what right do I have to speak about something like this? And I almost let that thought keep me from saying anything. But then I thought, if what I have to say is helpful for someone, then I should do it. And I have a lot of very strong feelings about that. It's easy to get lost in intellectual discussion about theological issues and ideas and talk about conceptual Christianity from a philosophical level and what the nature of God must be like. And to many, the idea of something like universal salvation seems wonderful because that's the only thing that makes sense to them. But to those who have been victims of real horror, I don't think that the idea that their perpetrators will go unpunished is very appealing. Especially since they probably did get away with it in this life, and to think that they will not suffer consequences for it beyond. That would make any god a devil if he is there. And Jesus spoke very harshly about those who cause little ones to stumble, and those who would speak with the name of Christ on their lips and would treat a child in such a way that they would want nothing to do with Christ or God or the Bible. Jesus said that it would be better for them to have a millstone tied around their neck and to drown in the ocean. And so I don't think that there is a contradiction between a loving God and a just God if we really look at the actuality of evil in the world. And the sad part is that we can't just look at it as an external thing, and we can say there's a lot to be said about why it's wrong for church to get tied up in government, and when you can't tell the difference between a missionary vision and a vision of conquest, that's a big problem. And institutions can very easily become corrupt. But to look at the institution and to think that that's the only problem is a huge mistake. Because when I hear that story, much as Jordan speaks about the guards and the concentration camps, I have to be able to put myself not in the role of the victim or imagine that I would absolutely step in and do the right thing, but that under the right circumstances, perhaps I could be the perpetrator. And if not the perpetrator, then someone who would let it happen and say nothing. And for that reason, I think we have to ask ourselves, why Why did those people who were in that position do that? And where were they taught to treat children that way? And how far back does that go? Because I'm fairly certain that patterns of abuse like that don't spring out of nowhere, but they come from experience. And for that we need to shine a light. But I think the saddest thing about it was that those who had possession of the Bible made it so unappealing to those who could have needed it. And when I hear Charles tell his story, I wish he could know about the story in the Bible, and that it's a story about many fathers and sons, and one son who was raised by a father who, much like Charles, knew how to work with wood and craft things and work with his hands and all the artistry that pertained to, and that he suffered in a similar way. And that if we step back and look at it from another way, his true father, God entrusted his son to stay in this place, where if those who had any idea of who he was and had any concept of the value that is in every human being, they would have treated him with kindness and with respect and with love. But instead they abused him, and they tortured him, and they killed him. And yet the father, knowing that that is what would happen to his son, put his son in that position anyway, so that he could redeem those wicked people. And so we could try to answer questions like, what is the symbolic meaning of the residential schools in Canada, and the symbolic meaning of priests and nuns abusing children? That doesn't seem like a very important question to answer, though, because what we need to do is find out where the children are that are in that position right now, and we need to speak against the lies that the demons are putting out there, making people believe that doing that sort of thing is right. And we need to speak out about those who are trying to legalize behavior like that. And we need to figure out where our priorities are when we talk about loving our neighbor. And sometimes loving our neighbor means stepping on the toes of somebody else. And it's not, we shouldn't show we should show kindness to everyone, we should show love to everyone. But if some people only will accept love that is to affirm them in their delusions and to affirm the decisions that they're making that are causing laws to be changed, patterns of family and identity to be broken down. And if we say that we have to love those, maybe the most loving thing we can do is to say no. And we need to turn back to that Bible that not only has the stories of suffering and sacrifice and love, but some of that love comes in the form of telling us that some things are wrong. And it's okay to say that some things are wrong. We need to say some things are wrong, because if we start to allow certain things, saying that they're not wrong, then we find ourselves on a slippery slope. And then we might get to the place where children like Charles can be victimized in the open and in public, and they'll have no recourse, because a 5-year-old can't take an adult to court and sue them and have them tried. And chances are most of those victims wouldn't even know that what was happening was wrong. And so we need to act like Christ. And Christ, when he was here in the flesh, he didn't seek to perpetrate violence. He didn't seek to harm people, even evildoers. But if there was someone who is suffering, and if there was a child who is in pain and who is being abused, Christ would place his body between that child and the one doing the wrong, and he would take the pain, and he would take the punishment, because that's what he did. And so that is what we need to do. We need to be the people who would step in the gap and take the blows and take the punishment and take the pain for children, so that when they hear that you are a Christian, that's the image that is in their mind of a Christian. Someone who would take the pain for them, that would put themselves in the place of suffering to keep them from harm. I guess that's all I have to say.